Today on Strong Like a Girl, we welcome someone who is pure powerhouse energy, Michelle Cummings. I met Michelle at our mutual friend's birthday party, which some of you may remember the episode with Amy Hyatt. Well, that's who first introduced us. We hit it off instantly, and since then we've built one heck of a friendship. Michelle is the big wheel and founder of Training Wheels and also the co-founder and chief creative officer of Personify Leadership. She is an accomplished author and a dynamic sought-after speaker in the areas of leadership, team building, and experiential learning. She speaks at more than 25 conferences a year, and she writes a weekly team building newsletter called The Spokesperson, which reaches to over 24,000 subscribers in more than 100 countries. From humble beginnings to global impact, Michelle has built her career with grit, creativity, and a belief that hands-on learning changes everything. Welcome to the Strong Like a Girl podcast, Michelle Cummings.
Thank you, Tanya. It's so good to see you.
It's so nice to see you. Yeah, I can't even remember how long it's been since we actually saw each other's faces.
Yeah, it has been. It was pre-COVID. I'm certain of that. So it's been a minute. Yeah.
Yeah. So how are you? How's life where you are right now?
Yeah, it's going really well. It's, this last year has presented some interesting challenges that I don't think any of us really could have predicted. But at the same time, that's what leadership and, working in teams, resiliency is just something that is a skill that not everybody has, but everybody needs for sure. And so, whenever faced with a challenge, we figure it out, right? That's just kind of what you do.
For sure. So I want to kind of go back and take you right back to where it all began for you. So I think you grew up in Kansas. Is that right?
I did. I'm a farm kid from Kansas that is an accidental entrepreneur. That is not anything I ever thought that I would end up doing. But here I am. Now I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've got more than one company and clearly don't know how to stop doing that. So,
what was life like for you growing up in Kansas? What was your family?
I came from very humble beginnings. We were a self-sufficient farm family. So, and what that means is we used to tease our parents that the only time they let us go to town was for church and toilet paper because we pretty much had everything else that we needed out on the farm. We had we have a cash crop farm business. So my dad planted wheat and corn and things like that. So that's how we made our money. And then as kids, we had all the animals known to man. We had a milk cow. We had, cows, chickens, pigs, sheep. We had an acre garden that we tended all summer. So it was, we were really self-sufficient. And one thing that I loved about my parents is that we worked really hard even as kids, but they made all of the learning really fun or all the work really fun. Like when it was time to go cut wood to heat the house for the winter, they would turn it into games and things like that. And so my parents didn't know it, but they were experiential educators and really shaped who I am as a person as far as now I quote unquote play games for a living, but I do it very intentionally to surface behaviors that I'm about to teach skills in to leaders. And so some of those foundational, having fun while you're working, started with my parents, and it was just to keep kids entertained probably, but at the same time, just to kind of make it fun. So
that is very interesting. I never thought about it like that, about how parents oftentimes will create an experience that helps their child learn while having fun, right? And you absolutely have done that. I know because I've taken some of your training and we've had many conversations, but I didn't know that about you. So that's a little gem of a nugget there.
Yeah.
So when you think back to yourself as a child, what was kind of a trait you had then that shows up for you today in your adult life and your career? Kind of a common
I've always
thread.
been very adventurous. And I think being an entrepreneur, you have to have a certain comfort level with risk and adventure, just because that's what owning your own company is. There's highs, there's lows, and, it's never a straight line from point A to point B. You may set goals and think, it's going to be easy. And then the pitfalls and the ups and downs that happen in that process can be pretty intense. And I would say, I was always an adventurous kid. I wanted to be outside more than I wanted to be inside. And I always know that I've always been very creative as well. My parents said that when I was still in a crib, they had my crib right next to my dresser. And I figured out that if I pulled out the drawers in the dresser, just and stair-stepped him, I could create a ladder. And so before,
Oh,
like, I was supposed to be out of bed, I would literally crawl on top of my dresser, crawl down the stairs, makeshift stairs
yeah.
that I had just created, and I would leave the house. And one time when I was like 2.5 years old, they woke up and they could not find me. And I was literally just out wandering around out on the farm. So my grandfather ended up finding me. He was down in the field, and evidently I had heard him, and I toddled all the way down there, just wearing pajamas and a diaper. And he just saw me, picked me up, put me on his lap, and kept right on farming. And so when my parents came like rushing down to find me and whatnot, they were like, Dawn, you gotta keep better track of your kids,
Yeah.
So I've always been very adventurous and creative, and that is still showing up for me today, that I use in both my companies. So
Really? Yeah. So who was the first woman you looked at and thought, I want to be just like her?
oh, that's a great question. I was blessed with a lot of amazing women in my life. I was a 4-H kid when I was in the 4-H group, when I was a kid. And I had a lot of great leaders there that a lot of them were women. And then I was involved in our church. And I remember there was one woman named Rose Garrison, who was the Vacation Bible School leader that particular year. And she was just hysterical. She was so funny. And I just remember it was the first time I really looked at an older, woman and person in my life and thought, I want to be funny. I want to be like that. She looks like she has so much fun all the time that I want to be like that when I grow up. And Rose is still with us. She's in her 80s now, and she is still that person in our community back in my hometown of Norton, Kansas, that everybody loves, everybody looks up to. She still is majorly engaged in all of the community efforts, and I still want to be like Rose Garrison when I grow up.
Isn't it amazing when you think about that? I like that question too. And I would tell you that one of the first women in my life was my mom's boss, actually. And her name was Millie. And my mom worked in a daycare, and she was the director of the daycare. And I would go when I had like PD days or, like things like that with school. I was off school. And Millie would take me shopping, like that they would have to do shopping for the daycare and things like that. And she had this really cool little car and all these kinds of things. And she was really somebody who stood out for me. And my mom would tell you she's the best boss she ever had. So I think that's an interesting link, right? That I had such a positive experience with her as a kid, and my mom had such a positive experience with her as an employee. So a remarkable woman. Yeah.
Well, how you
Millie's
show
great.
up for people matters, I remember how she made me feel. And I remembered I want to be like that when I'm older and have other people feel that same way, because it just felt good. I was having fun while we were learning, and that's still true in pretty much all the work that I do. Is has to be some sort of element of fun while you're learning. To see those light bulbs go off, like there's something there that imprints in your brain that then it makes the learning sticky. And so, and if you think about ROI, your return on your investment of your time, your effort, and energy, we want to remember it. We want it to imprint in our brains, and so that we could access those skills later.
That's a really good point. When you think about, people bring up memories or they reminisce and stuff, they're oftentimes very funny things that happened or things that brought them great joy or they were enthusiastic about or stuff like that, right? So that makes good sense that would help solidify that learning in your brain.
Yeah.
So which takes us to Training Wheels. So you're the big wheel at Training Wheels. So like, how did Training Wheels come to be? Like, what inspired you? How did it all start? Because it's been how many years now that you've had Training Wheels?
Yeah, Training Wheels is 26 years old as of 2025. So yeah, which sounds strange to me because I don't feel that old. I'm very young at heart. So when I have a company that's 26 years old, that seems kind of impossible. But so I got my bachelor's degree in psychology, and I immediately went into adventure therapy, working with kids that were experiencing trouble, at home, making poor decisions and things like that. And that's actually where I met Amy Hyatt, who introduced us. And Amy and I instantly connected, became amazing lifelong friends. But this camp that we worked at, it was a wilderness camp for troubled kids. And what they had there is they had an experiential learning program. They had a ropes course there, and in all of the counseling and the therapeutic activities and things that we would do with kids, I really found that talk therapy, just sitting in a circle and talking about things, kind of got us nowhere. But as soon as we did some sort of experiential activity that really surfaced a specific behavior or something that we wanted to talk about with the girls, I saw marked improvement in their treatment plans and their progress, towards working towards their goals to get back home and to things like that. And that right there is what kind of captured me. I was like, I want to learn more about why that stuff works. Why does the experiential stuff like finally get us somewhere? And part of it is that the experiential activities are kind of fun, but then you almost catch people in their own behavior. So there's this little aha moment that then when you debrief it and you talk about what just happened, why did that happen? Does that happen back in the real world? And so that what, so what, now what kind of process is really the foundation of experiential learning. And so I wanted to learn more about why that stuff worked so well. So I went and got my master's degree then in experiential learning. And so I did that in Minnesota at Minnesota State University at Mankato. They had a fantastic experiential education program there. So, and then once I got my degree there, I then went to work at an organization that half the month they did work with kids that, more at-risk kids that were starting to make some poor decisions and things like that. And then the other half of the month, they did work with corporate and community work. And for me, I was like, oh my gosh, adults can learn this way too. And so then it opened up a new horizon for me as far as like, how could I make more adult learning, more fun and experiential and whatnot. And so then Training Wheels became a kind of a product of that. When I started looking around for a job, I couldn't really find one that I just truly loved. So I decided, well, I'm pretty good at making up games now, and I'm pretty good at, creating this experience for people of self-discovery, of self-awareness, whatnot. So maybe I'll start a company where I can bring people, to me, or I could go to the people. So, and I love a good metaphor. So the metaphor of the training wheel is really it's just a core metaphor that kind of fits all the work that I do, is that when you're learning how to ride a bike and you're using a training wheel, you only use that training wheel for just a little bit before eventually you have to take that, you have to take it off and you have to try it on your own without it. And the first time you try it, it's like super scary and you have to take a risk. And it's going to push you outside your comfort zone. There's risk of failure. There's risk of falling. But it's up to you to take that training wheel off and then own it. And nobody else can do that for you. And that's really at the core of all of the work that I do with people, is that I'm only with a group for a really short period of time before it's up to them to where they have to take that training wheel off and then own it. And so at Training Wheels, I have authored multiple books in the team building field, and I've created multiple team activities to where people can purchase those and do those, with their own teams, or they can bring us in and we can do team development programs as well. So I started my company really young, and I'm an accidental entrepreneur. I had no idea what I was doing. And this also makes me
no one
sound
ever
rural,
does.
But
no one ever
the
does.
internet was kind of new at the time. So I got a website and, a little bit of a hope and a prayer. And 26 years later, it's still working for me.
So you sell resources and different tools for facilitators as well, right? So not just to companies to be able to implement things, but for people, like I'm a facilitator as well. So I would be able to purchase some of those things to implement into some trainings that I do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a little bit of a facilitator warehouse, if you will. We have everything that you could come and you could purchase your own activities to do with whatever group you wanted to facilitate. And then we could also provide team experiences. We do a lot of facilitation training as well to kind of teach people how to facilitate and how to do experiential learning with groups. So my role in the kind of the industry now, or the field, is I do a lot of teaching of other facilitators as well as doing team development work with organizations.
And have you created all of those games and learning tools? Like, have you created all of those?
I've created a lot of them. I create them and I curate them. So I'm also like, when other people create an activity, they'll bring it to me also and say, hey, I've created this. And then I play with it. I vet it. I have my team of facilitators also play with it. So if there is something that is on our website that we either created it or curated it, and then if it's an independent facilitator that brought it to me and says, hey, I think this is a great idea. And if we do too, then we do a royalty share and things like that. So, but we have over 500 different activities and books. And I think on our book tab, I think we have over 90 titles. Now I've written 6 of them. So I've curated a lot of those titles. And again, I know so many of the authors in the field now, and it's a really kind sharing based kind of field, because really at the core of it, we're in the business of making humans better humans. And when you can catch people in their own behaviors and give them a little dose of self-awareness and perspective, that can truly be a real gift to people and their growth as a leader, as a team member, and whatnot. So yeah, I love the proverbial ahas that we see in the type of programming that we do.
It's almost like magic sometimes, right?
It can be. It really can.
Or
and
math.
It's profoundly impactful for people as well, especially when it's done well. Now, we all know there's some bad team building out there. We don't do, like as soon as the Geico commercial starts making fun of your field and they do trust falls and they do things like that, like those are not the things that we do. So I always tell people that, there's kind of 3 buckets that I think you can put team building into. There's team bonding, team building, and team development. And there's value in all 3 of them. But I think team bonding sometimes gets lumped into team building. And that's why I think sometimes team building can get a bad rap. Because team bonding, the whole purpose of team bonding is just to get together and have a good time and whatnot. So you could go bowling, you could go go-karting, you could, do a team meal together either. And that's team bonding. And there's a lot of value in team bonding, just having a good time together with your colleagues, but it's not facilitated. And so there's not really debriefing or any reflection time incorporated, and it's probably not led by a true facilitator. Team building, then, that's kind of where we come in. And this is where it's like really intentionally designed program that meets your needs, kind of what you're looking for. It can be a little bit of a shorter program. It could be 3 to 4 hours, but there's intentionality behind it. And, in our selection process of the Rolodex of 500 activities that I have in my head, then I'm going to pick the ones that specifically match. We'll do it, we do a needs assessment with each client, and I'm going to pick the ones that are the absolute best, that match whatever the desired program outcomes are that you have. And then the 3rd bucket then is team development. And team development usually includes some sort of behavioral assessment like Clifton Strengths or DISC or Predictive Index or, True Colors or any of those types of assessments. And it's more ongoing, like long-term programming, with really probably the outcome being behavioral change or organizational change or something like that. So, and there's value in all 3 of those. But when I do my needs assessment, I really do, ask people, what is team building to you? And let me share with you what it means to me, because I just want to have a shared mental model of what it looks like to you. So that way that we're operating from the same framework and that we can design a program that's really going to fit their unique needs. So.
Yeah, for sure. I remember, I don't know if it was when we met or around that time, but you told me a story about a deck of cards and losing your luggage. What is that? What's that story?
Yeah. So one of the books I wrote is called Playing with a Full Deck. And I came up with 52 team activities using just a deck of playing cards. And that book came about from a very stressful event. I got hired by a group out in Los Angeles to come out and do a program for 1,600 people and me as the facilitator. So now that's kind of a large group and a little bit unique. But so it was more kind of like a keynote, but yet I call my keynotes play notes. Because we're going to play while we're learning, and you're not going to listen to me talk for 45 minutes ever. And so anyway, I, knowing this ahead of time, I shipped, thousands of pounds worth of equipment out to LA. And a couple days before the program, I tracked my shipment and it was lost. It was nowhere in the system. It was, and this was quite a while ago. This was 2006-ish. So it was a while ago. We've come a long way in the shipping tracking department since then. But back then it was a little bit more sketchy, and they had lost my shipment. So, but knowing this ahead of time, I was still at the office. So I packed 8 bags worth of gear, and I get on the airplane, fly to LA, and I landed in LA, and my bags went to Milwaukee. So I don't know why they went to Milwaukee, but they did. So I landed at 9 o'clock at night. And you know, when you're standing at baggage claim and you're watching all those bags
Yeah.
come down, and I have 8. So in theory, you're going to start seeing them come down, and not one of them made the trip. So at 9 o'clock at night, I now have literally the clothes on my back, and I have a program that starts at 9 o'clock the next morning with 1,600 people and me. So I went to a 24-hour Walmart, and I'm a little bit of a panic. And I was like, what do you have 1,600 of? And they're like, well, that's not really quantity we stock on the shelves. I'm like, oh. So I just had to go into major what I call MacGyver mode. You remember MacGyver? I know that dates a little bit from the 80s, but
No,
like,
I'm
he
there
could
with
get
you.
himself backed into a corner and then like totally create some sort of explosive something to, get him out of a sticky situation. And so that's kind of what I felt. I'm like backed into a corner. And so I go to the toy aisle and I was like, okay, let me see what they have a lot of, and then I can get creative. And so I was like, dominoes, they only have 5 sets. And then, and then I got to the playing card section, and they had 40 decks of playing cards in stock. So I was like, okay, 40 times 52, it gives me a little over 2,000. I'm like, okay, this could work. So I literally pulled out a deck of cards, sat down in the aisle, and just started like, okay, what do I got here? I've got numbers, suits, colors, like whatnot. And so I was like, okay, this is it. And so in the moment, I came up with probably 10 quick activities that I could do, just kind of like going through the Rolodex. I'm like, okay, what uses numbers? And so, so I was like, okay, I could do that. I could do that. I could do that. I was like, okay, this is it. So I bought all 40 decks of cards, some painter's tape, and a 6-pack of Mountain Dew. And I went to my hotel room that night and ended up coming up with about 25 different activities that I could do. So I got to the place really early the next day. And with that painter's tape, I made a giant checkerboard on the floor. And I put 1 deck of playing cards in each square. And so as people funneled in, I said, okay, what I want you to do is just get into groups of 52. And so they just kind of self-selected into one of the boxes. And now I'm no longer working with the team of 1,600. I'm now working with multiple teams of 52. And so it just in your brain, it kind of like just reduces the stress a little bit. Like it's just like you're just making sure that everyone can hear you and see you, but you're just working with a group of 52. And so anyway, and that particular group was an after school care teacher group or staff group. And for them, like there was some math activities that we could do, and they were connection activities, like go find someone that has the same number or the suit or the color. And so for them, they're like, it's a great way to divide kids. We could do some math things with them to kind of further enhance some of the math curriculum that they were teaching in school. And for school teachers, they're like, we love this. It's a prop we already have, or it's an
for sure.
expensive prop. And so when I finally got home from that program, I slept for a few days after that. But then I was like, okay, if I came up with 50 or if I came up with 25 activities jacked on Mountain Dew, then surely I could put a little bit more creativity into that, come up with another 27 activities. So there's 52 team activities in the book because that's just novel. You kind of have to do 50.
Yeah, for sure.
So, but that is how that book came about. A total MacGyver moment that has really served me well. And now I don't go anywhere without a deck of play cards.
Well, I would certainly put you in the resourceful camp for that.
Yeah, for sure. Resilient and resourceful for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you do 25 conferences a year, generally around that number. So that's got to be at least a couple of months,
Yes.
a couple of months, right?
Yeah.
What are the themes and challenges in terms of team development that are kind of emerging today, coming up that you're seeing? Like, what are you speaking about today?
Yeah. Stress and resiliency is definitely still high topics. And a lot of that, too, is just like agility, like how quickly when a stressor gets kind of introduced to someone, how agile are you? Are you able to kind of take that information and have a growth mindset? Like, oh, okay, this happened. What do I do with it? Or like a more of that fixed mindset, like, oh, my gosh, and go to that more like locus of control, like external locus of control versus that internal locus of control. So I do a lot of talking about that. AI is, of course, a huge topic of discussion right now. Is it going to take jobs? Is it going to, have a reduction in force? And a lot of organizations are saying yes to that. So there's just some fear and anxiety there. And And then at Personify with the leadership work I do as well. So Training Wheels and Personify Leadership are two separate companies, and I do speak with at the conferences for both companies.
Oh, okay.
But there are still some conferences that they want connection activities. How do we make sure that people, especially coming out of COVID, I know we're 5 years out from COVID, but it's like people are still feeling really disconnected.
Yep.
And so how do we make sure that people are, staying connected or strengthening relationships rather than having AI or whatever, being so digital? How does that drive disconnection rather than connection? So,
Do you have a favorite topic? Do you have a favorite thing to talk about?
Gosh. I mean, I do love talking about team dynamics. I mean, like there's just so much that goes into a healthy team. So, and then to get groups to kind of self-identify what really works well in our team, and then what could we do better. And I don't ever call them strengths and weaknesses because I think at any given time, our strength can also be something will happen that breaks it a little bit. So I usually call them strengths and development areas. And I think that they can fluctuate in between both of those. What's a strength of mine right now, 2 months from now, could maybe pull into that development area camp because of something that happened. I've got my own team that I work within as well. And sometimes I'm a really strong, gifted leader. And then there's other times when stress gets really high that when I show up, it's not the way that I would prefer to show up, but it's my current reality. And so there's always a continuum there, I think, of strength versus what could I be doing, or what behavior could I be doing a little bit better at this particular moment. So
I've spent the last 8 years or so working directly in commercial construction. And I think, there's lots of opinion around this type of thing, right? And so I believe very strongly in it. But I think there's some industries that maybe don't see the value in investing in things like team development, or they would call it fluffy or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And so what would you say to somebody that said, that's just fluffy, that's nothing? Because I think it really impacts a team, and it can make large differences in the performance of the team, but how the team communicates and the overall functionality and efficiency of a business. And if things happen, how those people come together to address whatever happens. So I think it's really, really important, but I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, no, I could not agree with you more. It's so important. And if you think about it, like in one of our leadership classes or one of our modules, we talk about mirror neurons and how people will literally mirror the behavior that they see you do. And as leaders, you have to have such great self-awareness around this, and not everybody does. And so if you have a leader that comes in arms crossed, be like, I hate this team building crap, or I don't think this is necessary, or anything like that, then people are going to mirror that same attitude and thought process that you bring to it, even if they might also maybe if they disagree with that. If you're the leader, then they don't want to be the one sometimes to challenge status quo or be the one that's like, actually, I think it'd be really good, So I heard a recent metaphor that leaders are the not the thermometer, but the thermostat. They're the ones that create the what is the environment that our team is going to be operating in. And your whatever attitudes that you bring into it, that's what everybody is going to mirror. When I show up stressed, then everyone else is going to probably be mirroring a little bit of my stress, even though it has nothing to do with them. But that's just human behavior, and that's the way the brain is wired, is to mirror the behaviors and emotions and whatnot. So if it feels like a really connected team, then it's going to feel good. People are going to be really, productive and efficient and whatnot. But if it feels really stressed and scattered and whatnot, it'll be the opposite of that, and the opposite of what you want in your team. So
I think so. Yeah, I agree with you. And in the last couple of years of my life, I've become more aware of energy, right? And so trying to be more aware of my energy and walking into a room and feeling the energy of other people and how that can influence what goes on in that room, even the conversations or anything else, right? And how it changes when somebody else enters the room that might have very low energy
Yeah.
or a dark energy, and kind of really starting to pay attention to that. So yeah, I can totally see how those nonverbals and other kinds of things that they do to kind of put up barriers for team development and team learning, and just not taking a shot at it, you know?
Yeah. And some people just lack self-awareness around it. And so the more you can do opportunities like a team building event, or even just, it doesn't even have to be a big thing. Just carve out 10 minutes of your everyday team meeting to create moments of connection before you dive into content. And that's a phrase, connection before content, that it was coined by Peter Block, who is New York Times bestselling author and whatnot. But I love, it's 3 words. And I think those 3 words have so much power. Connection before content. Like, get your team connected personally before you dive into whatever the meeting is about. And those 10 minutes will be so valuable. It's going to gain you so much more goodwill and team cohesiveness. And that's what you want when you have a team working on a project together, or working towards company goals, or whatever it is. So spending time to get connected, in my opinion, is never time wasted. So
I completely agree. I think like large scale events, which I have a history in, like Olympics and things, I think they do that very well, is the connection before content piece. Because I think you become so much strong connection between people. It starts to happen there, right? And I mean, you're working long hours and things like that too. But I think that, I think the ones I've worked for certainly do a really good job at that. And you can see the difference. You can feel it. You can feel it in a team for sure, right?
Yeah, and I've listened to a few of your other episodes too, and you talk about just like how strong that team was at the Salt Lake, Olympic committee that you were on, and those friendships and colleagues are still strong today because of that experience. And so that also, if you think about that from a longevity point of view, spend time connecting, because the long-term effects of that are really immeasurable.
Yeah. Such a gift in so many ways. So you facilitate and speak in countries where you don't speak the language. Is that right?
Yes. That's
so how do you manage the language barrier? Like, if you're going to Korea or China or, I don't know, Hungary, and you don't speak the language, how do you communicate to them what you're trying to say?
Yeah. So we are a little bit spoiled in America, or the English-speaking countries, that the business language is pretty much English-speaking around the world. Now, for those countries and those keynotes that I have done, for those that are that English is their second language and not their first language, then often there's interpreters, and that makes it very challenging, because you basically have to say a sentence, and then you have to pause while you wait for the interpreter to interpret what you said.
Right.
So it makes it more challenging, but it can be done. I actually had one client in China that brought me out to keynote one of his conferences. He did not speak one word of English. I only speak like 6 words in Chinese. And we had this amazing device that when I pressed a button and I spoke into it and I released the button, it spit out what I just said in Chinese. So there was one time it was just the 2 of us. He took me out to the Great Wall of China, and just for an afternoon of just hiking into experiences and whatnot. And we just spent the entire afternoon just speaking into this device. And then his device, he spoke Chinese into it. And when he released the button, it spoke English back to me.
Wow.
And it was probably 85% accurate, which caused for some very comical discrepancies. And we just laughed and had fun, and we just made it work. So technology is so great. We've come a long way. I've been facilitating internationally now for a couple decades, and Google Translate and things like that make it very easy from a travel perspective. But then the conference committee itself are the ones that really do help provide. I went to a conference last year in Spain where I was an attendee. I mean, I did one workshop, but I wasn't the keynote. And they had everybody, you walked in and they gave you a device, and you could select from one of 4 languages on the device, and you put on your headphones, and you got to listen. You could see the speaker speaking in their language, and it was coming through in English for me. And that was a really cool experience to be on the receiving end of a
Right.
keynote where I didn't speak the language of the speaker who was speaking. So,
Hmm.
so I rely a lot on the host committee to help provide the experience for their participants. But there's definitely workarounds that you can do. But I only speak English, unfortunately. I wish I spoke multiple languages, but I don't. So.
Me too. I wouldn't, yeah, I don't have the acumen for it for sure. So
Mhm.
let's talk about Personify Leadership. So you created that with Angela Sebely?
Siebely. Yep.
Siebely.
Yeah.
And so what's Personify Leadership?
Yeah. So Personify Leadership is a leadership development curriculum that Angela and I co-authored and co-created together. So Angela found me through Training Wheels. She was an HR director at an aggregate company, so mining and gravel and that type of thing. So she was the HR director and was responsible for designing leadership training for all of her people. And if you can think about the blue collar miner worker that, has been told you have to come into the office for 2 days of leadership training. Oh, they hard eye roll. They, like they don't want to leave the field. They might not see the value in it. And so she had designed a training that was pretty good, but it needed a little dose of experience to kind of make it great. And so her company was based in Switzerland, even though she lived in the States, and they flew her to Switzerland for a team meeting. And while she was there, they had hired a local facilitator to come in and do some team building work with this multinational team. And so anyway, it was her first exposure to experiential activities. And so afterwards, she would approach the facilitator and said, "Oh my gosh, I loved this. Like, do you know of anybody in the States that does this?" And they said, "Well, actually, you need to look up Michelle Cummings at Training Wheels because I bought all of this stuff from her." And so she flies back to the U.S., looks me up and says, "Hey, I've just created a leadership training. Could you maybe look at my curriculum and pop in some experiential activities to kind of bring the learning to life?" And so that's how we first got started. And then what was even more uncanny about that is that when she flew home, she lived in Golden, Colorado at the time, and I live in Littleton, Colorado. So we were only 10 miles apart from one another. So she had to fly to Switzerland to find me. But
Yeah.
but anyway, but that's how we met. And so when and that was we didn't know it at the time, but that was our first iteration of Personify Leadership. So she was really gifted at curating the content. Like, here's what I want my leaders to have skills in to go back and lead their workforce effectively. And I brought the experiential learning. And then, through my team building work, I also do a lot of work in leadership as well. So we each brought our unique perspectives and experience to the partnership. And then when she left that organization, then we created Personify together and designed a curriculum that it's so fun to participate in it. Like, leaders are having fun while they're learning. Yep. But at the same time, there's 8 core competencies and behaviors that we teach skills in that are just necessary core competencies that you have to have skill in. You can't be really gifted in one thing and ignore these other 7 behaviors that are expected in leaders to have. So we designed a model that we can come out and we can deliver a training or that training for an organization, or you can become certified where you can either if you have an internal training team, you can become certified and then you can deliver it internally. So
yeah, and I've delivered it a couple times. It's fun to deliver too. Like, it's a great program. Like, the stories and the things that come out during that time with those people, it's always a lot of fun. Yeah, I enjoy it. So it's built on the idea of a body, right? So the mind of a leader, the hands of a leader, the feet of a leader. Those
we wanted
a
model that was very sticky and easy to remember. We didn't want a lot of 4-letter acronyms that people would have to remember. So, the heart of a leader is around how do you lead with intention and how do you build trust and respect amongst those that you lead. The mind of a leader is around emotional resiliency. What are your stress triggers? How do they impact the way you communicate and lead others under times of stress? The voice and ears of a leader is around effective communication. That's where we'll bring in a behavioral assessment like DISC or Strengths Finders or something like that. The hands of a leader is around effective delegation, because most people are hired up in an organization because they were really good at their job and not because they have great leadership skills. And so knowing how to delegate tasks to others, especially if you were their peer and now you're their boss, that can pose some challenges. The feet of a leader is around walking the talk and holding others accountable, yourself included. The spine of a leader is around courageous conversations and how to say and do the hard things. And then eyes of a leader is around how to be a visionary leader, how to set appropriate goals, how to cascade goals down to your team, and how to be a leader that has a vision for the future. So those are the 8 main competencies that we teach.
Yeah, and it sticks with you. Like, I think I can't even tell you how many times it crosses my mind, like the mind of a leader or something comes up or whatever. It just, it sticks with you. And I took that how many years ago now, right?
Yeah.
And I've led it a couple of different times. I'd like to start leading it again, actually. So hopefully that'll work out. But so when you, then Angela left your partnership. So you kind of almost had to use your own courageous conversations and have some of that, because leaving a partnership can be very challenging, right?
Yes.
And kind of sorting through, because there's lots of things involved in that, never mind emotions.
Yeah.
So are you open to talking a little bit about Angela's journey?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, Angela was one of the most gifted trainers, facilitators, content creators. I learned so much in my own leadership journey from her. And she ended up having just some real life challenges. And she ended up with a little bit of a mental health crisis and fell into addiction. And unfortunately, addiction doesn't care who you are. And it was very challenging to be her business partner, to love her as a person, to love her as a friend. And she had a multi-year journey with addiction, and eventually it ended up taking her. So, so we ended our partnership about a year before she passed. And part of it was just because of the unpredictability of addiction. And, one thing that I do love about leadership training and just being in the business of making humans better humans is that at my core and at her core, I knew that it was never her as a person. It was the addiction. And so I never stopped loving her. I may have stopped trusting some of her behaviors, but I never stopped loving her as a person, and just knew who she truly was before addiction, and just know that that's her final chapter is nowhere representative of her full story. And that I will always honor her legacy in Personify, and her DNA and fingerprints will always be within this program. We still use her videos. She was amazingly talented, and I will always be forever grateful for my journey with her.
Yeah, I did get to meet her and spend some time with her, so would echo her dynamic ability for sure in lots of different ways. And, I think part of the lesson there is that no matter, how talented you are and gifted in so many different ways, that addiction, that it'll just take anybody, right? Mm-hmm. And, it's not super selective, and it can, the average person or the, the less than average or more than average person, it can take all of us. So yeah, I think probably anyone who's listening has probably lost someone to addiction somewhere along the way. Yeah. So certainly sorry for your loss in that. Yeah. And you've authored a book, The Real Sisters, like a novel, not just all the other books you do with the training.
I know. So The Real Sisters, it's this kind of weird side thing that I decided to do. So I'm an author of fiction as well. So I think I started the author writing of a fiction story of a novel in 2009 and 10. And how it all came about was I'm in a book club, AKA Life Club. And we have, some of my most amazing friends have stemmed from being part of book club, because it's where we just talk about real life as well. But and we had a no guilt book club. So I don't always have time to read a whole novel in a whole month or if it's a topic that I just don't feel like I might enjoy, I don't have time for that. So we have a no-guilt book club, which just means, but if you show up to book club and you didn't read the book, you're going to find out what happened at the end, which I'm totally fine with. Well, so there was one month we read a book called The Friday Night Knitting Club by Kate Jacobs. And truth be told, I did not read the book that month. It did not sound like a book that would probably interest me a whole lot. So I show up to book club, and one of my friends, she says, I have the biggest surprise. I went on to Kate Jacobs' website yesterday to download discussion questions, and there was a button on her website that said, click here if you want Kate to call your book club. She goes, so I clicked on it, and she had our date and time open, so I signed up for it. So Kate Jacobs is calling our book club here in a little bit. And this was like 2010 before video conferencing was a thing. So now I feel like a total jerk for not reading her book. And I was like, oh my God, this is a New York Times bestselling author, and I didn't read her book. Like, give me the cliff notes. Like, tell me what happened. So we put her on speakerphone and just put her in the center of the table and just got to hear a little bit of her story, her journey. And I was so inspired. I picked up my friend's book and I was flipping through it. I flipped to the very back cover and there's a photo of her and she looks more like my sister than I do. And so I kind of instantly saw a little connection there. And then as I read through her bio, the last line in her bio said, this is her first novel. And she hit the New York Times bestseller list. And so I don't know why, but in that moment, I think it was the whole environment, it was so cool to ask her questions. How did you craft your characters? How did you create your storyline? And the experience that she created in that 45 minutes that she spent with us, I was like, I could do this. And so and for whatever reason, as soon as I read, this is her first novel, it became attainable to me. And so I went home from book club that night and I told my husband, Paul, I'm like, oh my God, I think I'm going to write a novel. And he was like, okay, when are you going to find time to do that in your spare time? And or your lack of spare time. Yeah. And I just couldn't let it go. There was something about it. A couple of weeks would go by. I'm like, what would I write about? What would I want to write about? And so then finally he was like, okay, let's draw it out of you. So my husband and I, we have this amazing code phrase that we use when I don't want his opinion, but I would love help fleshing out, brainstorming session. And we have this phrase we use called, will you go into inquiry with me? And it's been a true gift in our marriage because that's just our code phrase. Okay, you can only ask question, the person asking you, and they can't be leading questions to go towards something that you want, but right. That you could just we went to dinner one night and he started asking me questions and just peppering me with all the, why do you want to write a novel? Who's your intended audience? What do you want the book to do in the world? And then starting high, big picture overview and then kind of whittling it down to we were at dinner for 3 hours. And oh my. By the time we finished dinner, I had picked fly fishing as my genre. I had picked 5 characters. I named them, gave them their personalities, and I had not even picked up a fly rod yet. And when I started thinking about answering the question around what do you want the book to do in the world, I really started thinking about I would love to craft a story that would somehow hit the everyday book club market, that would hit the everyday woman wherever she is in her life, and craft a story that was so enticing, believable, inspiring, that it would inspire her to step outside of her day-to-day routine and try something new in the outdoors. Because I just think the outdoors is the best teacher. And I mentioned at the very beginning of this podcast that I adventure and risk and all of that. There's so much growth and learning that can happen there. So I thought, well, if I'm going to ask other women to do it, I have to do it first. So I picked fly fishing because I had never done it before. And so, and I wanted to pick a genre or something, whatever the topic is, that when I went to do it for the first time, I would totally suck at it because that's where all the raw emotion is. And I knew that I would be able to harness that and put it into one of the characters that whoever picked this book up and read it could really feel challenge of it and whatnot. So there's 5 women in the story. And then later come to find out when I did pick up my first fly rod, there's 5 main components to a fly rod. So I was actually able to kind of tweak and change their personalities to kind of metaphorically match the 5 main components of a fly rod. And so it's a story of adventure, the power of positive female friendships, because I think there's a lot of books out there that do the opposite and highlight the negativity that can sometimes be there. So it's the power of positive female friendships, and that you can learn a little bit about yourself each time you step into the river. So it was a fun journey for sure.
It's called The Real Sisters for anybody who's interested in picking up a copy. I have read it and can tell you that it is it's a great read. Yeah. So congratulations on that.
Yeah.
I have one more question and then we'll do our rapid fire.
Okay.
So last question. What piece of advice would you give to women embarking on their own entrepreneurial or facilitation career journey? Like, what's one thing you wish you had known?
One thing I wish I would have known is to have a coach or a mentor ahead of time. Like just having someone else that maybe had been in my shoes, that were thinking about doing the same thing. And I invite you to just take people to coffee and devour every word they say, take notes, take their advice, ask questions like you just asked, like, what piece of advice would you give me? And then take their advice and actually or at least be thoughtful and at least consider what they've said, because they are giving you that advice because it was a pain point for them at some point in time. So you can absolutely learn from somebody else's mountaintop peak, those mountains and valleys. You can learn a lot from the top experiences and the valley experiences as well, because there's a lot of growth that happens in both.
Yeah. That's great. Great piece of advice. Well done. All right, you ready? Rapid fire. Adapted from James Lipton of the Actors Studio. What is your favorite word?
Oh. Favorite word? Momentum.
What's your least favorite word?
Moist.
2 for that one. I can't believe it. What turns you on?
Positive energy.
What turns you off?
Hate. I just don't understand hate.
Yeah. What sound or noise do you love?
My dad's whistling.
What sound or noise do you hate?
You know when you're riding in the car and there's a rattle in the back seat?
Yeah.
Consistent little rattling that is not supposed to be there.
Yes, I do know that. What is your favorite curse word?
Shit.
Nice. What profession other than your own, and you've had plenty, but other than your own, would you like to attempt?
I will be a flower farmer in my retirement.
What kind of a flower?
Multiple different kinds, but I do have a farm in Kansas. But in my retirement, when I finally decide to be done with the stage and my current professional work, I just want to retire to my farm, and I want to bring joy and beauty into the world through flowers.
That's really nice. What profession would you not like to do?
Sanitation of any kind, or any type of routine.
Monotony.
Put together, any type of assembly work. Not for me.
Got it. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you reach the pearly gates?
Well done, good and faithful servant.
Nice. What does strong like a girl mean about you?
Resilience. I think I started out saying that, to be strong, you have to be resilient. You are going to face adversity. People are going to attempt to push you down, or whatever it is. You just have to be resilient. Again, mountaintop and valleys. I've learned so much from my valley experiences. I love the mountaintop. That's where the view is, the perspective. It's amazing. But the valley experiences are just as valuable, and probably you learn more about yourself in the valley than you do on the mountaintop.
Yeah. Yeah. Really good. Thank you so much, Michelle. Honestly, lovely to see you. Really nice to have a conversation with you. I wish we had hours more. I got more questions, but we'll just have to make a point of doing it again sometime.
That sounds great. Thank you so much for inviting me to be a guest. I appreciate it so much.
Yeah. Well, you're a gem. You're a strong girl, so happy to have you aboard. Find more information from today's episode and our guest in the show notes or at stronglikeagirlpodcast.ca. You can also leave a voice note at stronglikeagirlpodcast.ca to send your stories or reactions to what we talked about today, or maybe you know a strong girl that you think we should interview. Subscribe and follow wherever you get your podcasts, and please leave us a review. And thank you very, very much for listening.